Welcome to PowerUp podcast, the podcast that seeks to empower and dismantle, giving us the power and confidence to question, deconstruct, rebuild, and expand in life. I'm your host, Amma Rouge, voiceover and multidisciplinary artist, well-being advocate, food and book geek with over 14 years of movement-centered experience.
I am your host, Mesma, artist, choreographer, yogi and coach with a passion for alchemy, creativity, transformation and workplace wellness.
We recognise that we can't dismantle and empower or be empowered without first learning ourselves, diving deeper to unlearn the harmful, restrictive and unprogressive. It's an ongoing practice and journey for us all, which is why we created this podcast.
Our show features guests doing the work to enlighten, deconstruct and power up in their own magical ways.
We're going to be having conversations around the power of healing, transformation, well-being and creativity, and how they feed our personal and collective evolution, how they help us power up.
It is our pleasure to welcome Nadia Iftkhar into the space today. Nadia is the founding artistic director and CEO of Company of Others, a Northeast-based dance theatre organisation which collaborates with people who have experienced being othered by the society we live in, to co-create dance theatre experiences which highlight and share stories of the human experience through their lens. As a choreographer, she is interested in how we physically unlearn, learn and share our stories, and we are so here for that. She is proud to be co-vice chair of Newcastle East Mixed Multi-Academy Trust, and we are super proud to have her in the space today. Welcome, Nadia.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you both.
Honestly, it's such a pleasure.
Loving your mission as well, to understand or to explore how we physically unlearn.
And that part of our mission, you know, what it is that we're interested in, what it is that we're exploring, that shifts over time and molds and has a rebirth depending on, you know, where the people are that we're working with and where the world is as well, and what is really going on for those of us who experience that otherness.
Mm.
Company of Others really embodies this principle of being able to shift and I guess respond and embody the people within it, and I guess also the people it serves in a sense. And we were talking a little bit about this. I was going to say off air, but that's not the right terminology. We were talking a little bit about this before recording and what you had in mind when you created it. And I just thought it was so beautiful, so refreshing, really offered a sense of renewed hope. And I would love you to share it if you feel comfortable, Nadia.
Sure. Yeah, of course. I'm really open about this because I think it's really important that people don't see Company of Others as being me. So I talk quite openly about the fact that I created Company of Others in order to hand it over one day.
Wow.
And, sooner than people might expect as well. I always wanted to create an organization that would be a support kind of ground and training ground for people to take on their first artistic directorship of an organization, as specifically a dance theatre organization.
Mm-hmm.
And we're 5 years in. We had our 5th birthday in February.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was a big sigh of relief because people always say if you can get through to your first 5 years, then you've got a solid business. So it was a big relief and a lot to celebrate.
Yeah.
But having reached that milestone, there are a few other milestones that we have to hit in order for to feel like the organization's stable enough to take that change and that new artistic directorship and that period of instability. So I feel like in the next 5 years we'll probably we'll probably hit that point, and
That's
that
amazing.
hopefully, if everything goes to plan, and then that'll be when I start to, phase myself out. And I'm also really interested in a notion of a period of dual artistic directorship as well.
Mm.
For that incoming artistic director to find their own way of leading the organization, and whether the outgoing artistic director is there just to kind of keep things running while
Yeah.
they discover that and explore and stretch things and shift things to offer a kind of 6 months of stability while they do that. Because I'm really aware of being an incoming artistic director, you almost have to hit the ground running. There's no real time to sit in an organization, absorb
Yeah.
it, and start to imagine how you want to lead and what that looks like for you. So I'm really interested in doing that a bit differently. And yeah, I always wanted to create something that wouldn't be mine one day, and quite soon.
Mm. And like in terms of the inspiration to make this company, could you tell us a little bit more about that? Of what was the ideas behind it?
Sure. I'm also quite open about this. I never wanted to lead a company. I never had any interest in it. And I think it's because I never wanted to be at the center of something. And all of the companies that I knew of in the dance world kind of had a very visible leader and somebody who the company was centered around. And
Mm.
I never wanted that, for myself as well. I never wanted to be at the center of something like that. And one of my really good friends, Nazli Tabatabai Kartenbach,
Yay! I want to big up to her as well. Amazing human.
lots of love for Nazli. She said to me, "But you're assuming it has to be done the way you see it." And that was a bit of a game changer for me. And
Wow.
I started to think about, well, what would an organization look like that wasn't like the ones that I see around me? And then Elevate came up. And again, and Nasli was really prominent in my life at that point and supporting me and guiding me. And Elevate was Arts Council's strategic fund for people who were already really leading the way with the creative case for diversity and equality within their work. And it was exactly what it says on the tin, an elevating kind of fund just to kickstart your work, to create an organization or to support an organization become more stable.
Mm.
And it was a really big fund, and I had absolutely no intention of applying. And Nasli said to me, "Well, you don't get to complain about who that money goes to if you're not putting your hat in the ring." And I was like, "Well, that's really fair, isn't it?" And it was for diverse organizations as well. And at the time, there was a lot of not diverse led organizations getting funded as diverse organizations. And that was kind of
Wow.
rubbing me up the wrong way.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Okay, but you don't get to complain if you're not going to put your hat in the ring." And I was like, "Yeah, that's really fair." So I made an application, and we were awarded £100,000 to create Company of Others. So that's kind of how it happened. So Naz was really at the center of Company of Others coming into being. Which I'm very grateful for. She was the nudge. I would say hand on my back, but sometimes it was definitely an elbow. Like, yeah.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
And had you had experience in running a company of a different kind before, or leading as an artistic director on something else, or was this like your first foray in? And the reason I ask is because of the model that you've created with Company of Others, you know, in the sense of knowing you're always going to hand it over, and creating that space for someone
Mm,
else to come in and find their feet as an artistic director. So yeah, I'm just intrigued.
mm. No, never done it before.
Wow.
Even doing the Arts Council application, they wanted a series of management accounts, but Company of Others didn't really exist. So for the application, and I was, before the deadline hit, I was Googling how to write management accounts. I just never done
Incredible.
any of that before in my life. And so I had to kind of teach myself all of it in order to make the Elevate application and to really think about what kind of organization was missing from the landscape and what a different kind of organization would look like, what it would bring, what it would support other people to do without ever having led an organization. And I think in many ways, that was a really good thing because I didn't play it in my mind. I didn't have, "Oh, well, this is how such and such does it,
Yeah.
so, I gotta do it that way." And, Arts Council really took a risk on me as well, I have to say, thanks to Arts Council as well, because I hadn't been in any kind of leadership position at all, apart from in a rehearsal room, of course, where we're all leaders, but not in a kind of holding all of the money and doing the governance, and not in that kind of way, no, and certainly not leading something for this long as well. I was also a freelancer, and I'd spent about 15 years being a freelancer, and you guys know what it's like. Every day is different, and you're in a place with different people, and that shift was
Mm,
really hard in the first couple of years. Really, it was really quite painful, and I missed my freelance
yeah.
life quite a lot. It was a significant shift for me.
I think you're so brave and so I can really see that it's almost as if this journey wasn't about you, it was about the what you were seeing was missing in your community and bringing that together.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what it was, and I think there was a little bit of me in there. I think at the time I was
Mm,
also feeling really out in the cold in the sector in the Northeast. Still am in many ways, but
mm.
also quite ignored. And I I was really craving somewhere to belong, and a thing to belong to, and a community to belong to. And it got to the point where I was like, fuck it. If it doesn't exist, then you make it, right? And
Yeah, and boy, like I've just got a goosebump. Like I've been attending some of your online events
mm,
this year in lockdown, and it's what a community you've created. It's just such a beautiful space.
thank you, Ella. It's been gorgeous to have you there. You make it beautiful with your presence.
Oh, thank you.
And I think that's the thing, I remember coming up with the name Company of Others, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's amazing." That's exactly what I want it to be, that I want it to be really proud of what it is and
Mm,
say it outright. And it is the people. Like, I can hand on heart say that for all that I and the rest of the team do, if it wasn't the right people in those rooms, it wouldn't work, It's all about the others that come in space with us, and they elevate it and make it a magical experience and a really safe experience, which is important.
yeah. And you've actually just been nominated for an award, Nadia.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's so well deserved. It's the National Diversity Awards, right?
Yeah. So, Company of Others has been nominated as a community organization, and I've been nominated.
Congrats.
Thank you. I've been nominated as a role model, which is really lovely.
So beautiful.
Absolutely amazing. Massive. Massive, massive. And from what you're saying, it sounds like identity is the very core and center of company of
Mm.
others. And typically, when we think about creating work, we tend to think about the person who is like holding the space of creation as their voice being the
Mm.
loudest, or, or leading the direction of the piece or the work that they're creating. And it sounds very much within company of others that there's this sense of co-creation
Mm.
in the identity, and the identity is really important within it. But I don't want to say that for you. I would love to know,
Sure.
how much presence identity has in the work company of others creates and in how you create.
I think I've been really thinking about this, and it's at absolutely every level and embedded in every way. It's kind of just in the DNA and it just exists. It's almost like it's this elusive thing that you can't put your finger on. Um,
Mm,
and that's really starting to come to light for me, and I'm starting to see it where it is, because it's been such a given. I guess that's it. It's such a given, and you can only really see it if you really pay attention to it, and
Mm,
that's really important as well, because what I don't want to perpetuate, and what company of others is not about, is performing our identity, or performing
mhm.
our trauma, or an anthropological, study.
yes.
Yeah.
It's really just about how we are and how we allow ourselves to be as well. I'm really aware for me that there have been certain spaces, and Ella has been in one of them, but very few spaces where I don't need to wear my armor
Mm.
at
Mhm.
all. And
And I'm thinking of one space that I've been in with you, which is just such a beautiful example of that. And I'm getting all teary at, like, have this is what you do, is you create spaces where you can be brave and you can be safe and you can be yourself.
and I think also you can be a different version of yourself, and
Mm,
until the last year, when we created Northern Storm and Grief Floats, and the only people allowed in those spaces were people who experience otherness. I didn't really know who I was without my armor, like,
mm,
because I just hadn't experienced that before. And I think it
Mm,
also it allows us to discover who we truly are
yeah.
without all of that, because that shouldn't be part of our it has to be at the minute,
Hmm.
but it shouldn't be part of our identity, and it
Yeah.
shouldn't be who we see ourselves as, because I'm much softer than people think I am, and I'm much um I'm much more emotional, and I'm much more gentle, but I think that's not how people see me, because I just don't get to be like that
Yeah.
unless in those spaces. So identity is really present, but not in the way that I guess the world thinks of identity at the minute. It's much more about who can we be when we feel safe, and how can we connect with others in a completely different way than what we do when we're wearing our armor. So identity is really
Mm.
present for me at the minute.
It's so interesting. I've been pondering over this. Someone said, I can't even remember who it was that said this to me. Identity is your destiny.
Right.
And I've been really pondering. It was Mara, a wonderful human being who I will introduce you both to, and hopefully we'll get on PowerUp podcast at some point. But what a fascinating concept of, like, the layers of that, in terms of what you're saying, in terms of, like, what we're born into, in terms of, like, how society shapes us, and then also that kind of the choices that we make in terms of how we choose to live our identity and unlearn.
Yeah. And I think that is exactly how we unlearn, by being in those spaces without our armor, as much as possible. And you know, for me, that's all I want to do at the minute, to be honest. Like, I'm starting to get a bit addicted to it. In a really good
That
way.
that's the best thing I've heard all day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really love it. And I think of, you know, our armor almost as an onion. Like, there's that
Yes.
layer that comes off, and then you just got to keep peeling. And I feel like that's the journey of unlearning for me. And it's as much about how we exist in those spaces and learning who we are, but also then transforming that to behaviors and then thinking, okay, well, how do I want to behave as this different person or as this true person that I am rather than different? Because it's also in our actions to others, isn't it? And
Mm,
how we act with others also allows them to disarm
Mhm.
and to
yeah,
peel
absolutely.
that onion off.
Yeah. And there's the example. There is company of others right there.
Yeah, that's it. In a nutshell, really.
It's beautiful. I would love to ask you, Nadia, just about you mentioned kind of saying to Nasli that, you know, you were seeing the models of companies and you were like, I don't want to do that.
Mm,
And that powerful moment when she said, well, you do it how you would imagine.
mm,
And I think this is really important for me because sometimes I feel like my imagination needs to be expanded to allow the possibility
mm,
in. Like I don't always have I had to really work, for example, on allowing abundance into my life because it's like
sure.
my framework, the models that I was seeing wasn't allowing for that possibility in my mind's eye. So I
That's
wanted to ask you a bit about that of like, how did you imagine something that didn't exist yet?
Yeah, I just also want to like acknowledge that that's so true. The deficit model is, it feels like it's getting louder as well, you know, like
Mm,
moving from that deficit model and not from a place of abundance just feels so loud at the minute. So I guess because it is more than company of others, it's also about, you know, how my life had to shift. And with all of that, it never all came at once. It was kind of like, you know, if you had a big map in front of you, just kind of rolling your finger around it and then just hitting somewhere and going, right, that's where we're starting. We're starting with the HR policy
amazing.
and then just work from there, because I think it would need a team of 10 people to be able to see it as a whole, because
Mm,
it's so complex and so layered as an organization, and every single thing is thought about a lot, you know. Um,
mm,
and that's right down from where we choose to rehearse to what the rehearsal day looks like, or, you know, where our office is going to be. All of those things are thought about really deeply. And I think in order to allow for that deep thought, you just have to pick somewhere. And
mm,
it's almost like the ocean. There's just this ripple effect, and you know, everything has a knock-on effect, and it also helps you make sense of the next bit. And,
mm,
and it's a practice as well, if I'm really honest.
mm,
It is it is hard to exist in a world, in the arts world, that still does really reward a certain way of working, and to
mhm,
daily resist that, and to continue to be thoughtful, which takes more time, which takes more money, which, you know, which isn't this conveyor belt of productivity
mm,
producing
yeah,
art. And it's hard, you know. I have my moments where, you know, we haven't been visible doing something for a couple of months, and I start to really panic and go, oh my god, you know, like, people are going to think we've dropped off the earth, or, you know, we're not doing anything interesting, or, but actually we're just rethinking our artistic policy for 2 months and really diving into that deeply, and that's as important. It is a practice to resist that, and
mm.
um, I guess in a way exactly what you're talking about with abundance being a practice, you know?
Yeah.
And can I ask, Nadia, you do you feel that as the artistic director of Company of Others, do you feel that you have the opportunity to do that? Do you feel like the framework within which we work in terms of the institutions and, the policymakers and
Mm,
the funding givers, do you feel that you are afforded the opportunity to really make decisions
mm.
slowly and, intentionally make choices going forward? Or do you feel that there's an aspect of compromise in terms of, how you want to lead
Mm.
Company of Others and how you want everyone to be able to create the work? How, like, where do you find yourself in that kind of sea?
Yeah, absolutely not. We're not afforded that, and there is a cost, and the cost quite often falls to me. And I work evenings and weekends, and that feels okay. I mean, it's not okay, but personally, for my life, I'm prepared to do that for a little while, in those early days of starting an organization. But the system the system desperately needs to change. It is impossible. It is
Mhm.
impossible to move slowly in the funding landscape that we have, in even opportunities that come up for artists. There'll be a commission opportunity for a work that has to be premiered 4 months from now, and the application process takes
Yeah,
6 weeks, and it's
Yeah,
like,
right.
so either you
yeah,
have to dream up this entire project and plan for it before the deadline comes, or
yes,
you then have to rush once you find out whether you've got it or not. Even that, I
yeah,
want to see commission opportunities for artists to premiere work a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now.
yes,
So it's right down from that tiny, tiny little example all the way through the system. And, I saw a tweet a few months ago that said, senior leaders who overwork are toxic. And the fury I felt at the lack of intelligence around that statement was big,
mm,
and also pain, because I
mm,
don't want to overwork.
Yeah.
I want to have a life and, to be able to enjoy my life while I'm still in my 30s. um, but I'm not afforded that. And, you can't make statements like that without saying, senior leaders are forced to exist in a toxic funding landscape. That is
Mhm.
mm,
and, funders, not all of them, a lot of it is private money, but I think certainly public funders are also forced to exist in a toxic landscape by our government,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was gonna say even society, we're forced to
Absolutely,
exist
Emma.
in a toxic societal environment. And Ella and I have been talking about this in the previous series when we were discussing burnout, and we were
Mm,
discussing productivity and, like, what does it look like to be positively productive,
yeah,
because we live in a society that is focused on output
yeah,
and, how much output you are doing is effectively aligned with your worth
yeah.
and your value. And doesn't they the society we live in doesn't value slow living and
Mm,
taking your time and really intentionally building those foundations and making sure that what you're wanting to create, what you're wanting to live, and what the community you're wanting to represent, really taking the time to make sure that begins from the inside out
mm,
and that can be felt and seen from the inside out, so that what's created externally is a direct correlation of that.
yeah,
We don't live in a society that even
no,
values that, or affords us that so much. And so how can we do that, as individuals? And you're doing it with Company of Others, in Company of Others existing
mhm,
is a resistance to that in itself, you know, and it's leading the way with a whole new model, which is the model that you didn't have when
Mhm.
you created Company of Others, and you are, you know, you are now that, without maybe necessarily intentionally meaning to be, but
Mhm.
it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful that through its existence, it's resisting that itself, and it's leading the way for a new model. And you know,
Mm.
as they say, lots of little fires make one big fire. So
That's it. That's exactly it, isn't it? Just trying to be a little fire. You
Yeah.
know, like,
yes,
and just trying to keep that little fire burning and to hopefully be shining long enough that somebody else can see it
yes,
and go, "Oh, I wanna make my little fire. What would that look like?" And that's why
exactly.
mentorship is so important to me as well. You know, I mentor a lot of artists, and it just feels absolutely crucial that
Yes.
Company of Others is also supporting not even the next generation. You know, I do a lot of peer mentoring as well, but supporting artists to be emotionally sustainable as well.
Mm,
It's, you know, that emotional sustainability for artists who are othered is is absolutely at the core of what our mentorship is about, and also
Mm.
helping them see that they don't have to do it in the way that it's being done, and that who they are and how they want to do it is as valid and special and important as all of the other ways. And
Yeah.
yes,
I'm hoping that is going to be, you know, a strong part of my legacy when I stand down from Company of Others, is that all of those artists that we've supported over the last 10 years will have thriving careers and be well as well, you know.
Yeah. I've been looking at this really lovely model. Do you know, are you both familiar with the hero's journey?
Oh.
no,
So there's the hero's journey, which is a super interesting kind of model that they use for storytelling, and it's actually usually at the core of every story. But I've recently come across the heroine's journey, and that as a principle is really about kind of unlearning this, you know, in this very patriarchal world where we learn about we learn everything in this very masculine way, and it's about doing and it's about action, of really learning to listen to our own intuition. And obviously it's not just about women, this is really a concept for everyone, to look at this world that we live in where particular people are very much in power and are kind of running the show and dictating how we should behave and how we should model ourselves. And it's really about teaching you to learn to look back inside and to honor your feminine qualities, and that actually there's a power in being this whole self where we're very much in balance, and we understand that, you know, it's sometimes we'll be in action and then sometimes we'll be in retreat, and sometimes we'll be learning and sometimes we'll be giving, and that it's really important to kind of honor and respect these different phases and seasons that we go to.
Mm.
And it really feels like your work is speaking to this and is really honoring this coming back home to ourselves, and this, that at the core of this work is unlearning so that you can really, as you said, peel back those layers and show your whole self and be your true self.
Absolutely. I mean, oh, so much of my leadership is instinctual, and
Mm.
it has been a bit of a problem at times because you know, we've never had an artistic policy until this year because, you know, and the board is saying, you know, we really need one. I'm like, but I don't know what my decision making process is, you know, and I can't I can't define it. And a lot of that is, you know, tied to my leadership as well. It's just
Mm.
instinctual. And I think that is a problem in an organization that you're making to hand over. But I wonder if it's also, it allows others to come in and lead from their instincts and from their gut. And,
mm,
you know, all of this rationalizing and writing down of methods, even, and all of that just feels like such a patriarchal way of working. And
Yeah.
and the way
Mm,
that it's been done before. And I do want to, there's a big drive in our sector to share learning and, all of that. And I do want to share, and I'm really an open person, but it's not something you're going to find in a document because I just don't know. I don't know how
yeah.
that. I don't know what it is. It's kind of, I remember hearing Elizabeth Gilbert talk about her elusive creative genius. Have you seen her TED Talk?
Yes.
No,
Amazing. Amazing
I
Yeah.
love
sharing.
the sound of that.
She talks about her creative genius being, this other thing that works alongside her, like a little ball of light or something. And some day she goes to work and it doesn't show up. She shows up, but her creative genius doesn't. And she, over a long period of time, learned not to rail against that and not to push and not to expect it to show up every day.
Mm,
And to know you can't be 100% your best every single day, and
right.
to take that pressure away. And I think about the elusive creative genius a lot in my work and a lot when I'm leading. And, if the thought isn't there, if the idea isn't there, if the answer isn't there, that's all right. It might be there tomorrow.
Yes.
And and I think that's also connected to my instincts for me. And some days I can't see what that instinct is, and it's not a gut feeling. But the next day, if the sun is shining, maybe it will be.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, our instincts and our gut feeling. I feel like that's, if there was a message that I wanted to share with young women and non-binary people everywhere in the world, it would be like, trust your instincts, trust that, listen to it, it's right.
Thank you for listening. You can connect to us and our guests via the links in each episode's show notes. Before you go, we invite you to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the goodness to come. And if you enjoyed today, perhaps tell a friend to tell a friend. We are always grateful for you, our listeners, for our fabulous guests, and to everyone who has contributed to and been a part of our journey here.
Our music is by Tomo Carter. Everything else is brought to you by us, the PowerUp Power Team.
I'm Mesma.
I am Amma Rouge, and we are PowerUp Podcast.